All right, everyone. I think we can go ahead and get started. We do have a tight agenda today. So let's kick it off and then we can catch folks up who are joining us a little bit late. Thank you all for coming out today. My name is Melissa Farr. I'm the Senior Distributed Organizer for Sierra Club, Pennsylvania. Sierra Club is one of our co-sponsors along with Generation 180 and Community Advocates for Clean Energy. So I will be moderating today. Please introduce yourself in the chat, your name, your role, your location, what school district you're coming from. We'd love to get to know you a little bit and see how, our panelists can support the work that you're doing. If you have a question during the presentation, please use the Q&A function. We are in webinar mode. If you do happen to put something in the chat, we will also try and catch that. Our panelists, if they have the capacity to answer your questions as you ask them, they will do so, but otherwise we will hold everything to the end. There will be time for questions at the end. Please stay on mute while everyone is speaking. We will send a follow-up email with the recording, the presentation, so that you will have all of this on hand in the future. Next slide. Like I said, we've got 3 hosts here today. When you get the slide deck, check us out. The links are there. And then at the end of the slide deck, there are also 3 slides that give a little bit more detail about the work that's being done by these organizations. And then our panelists come from a range of spaces. We've got fleet management, we've got school districts, we've got the DEP and EPA. This is a star-studded event. So you're going to be hearing from a lot of different perspectives weighing in on electric school buses. So yeah, we are super fortunate to have all of these great panelists here today. Thank you all for joining us. And then our agenda, we're going to look first at funding sources for electric school buses. We're going to hear from school districts who have actually put these funds into practice. We're going to hear about fleet management, and then we will have time for questions at the end. So we're going to get started with our funding sources, our panelists that will be discussing this section. So we've got Joshua Dziubek from PAD, Department of Environmental Protection. We've got Sydney Stern from EPA Region 3 and Charlotte Leon from EPA Region 3. And with that, I will turn it over to Joshua.
All right, thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Josh Dziubek with Pennsylvania DEP's Energy Programs Office. I'm program manager for our Alternative Fuel Incentive Grant program. So I'm going to be talking a little bit about what AFIG can do in regard to electric school bus funding. So we offer funding for electric school bus purchases through AFIG. AFIG is a competitive grant program. It offers approximately $5 million in grants per year to help transition to cleaner fuel technology. And we're open to a number of different entities, but more specific to this audience, we're open to school districts and nonprofit organizations. So that would include, any schools that are not part of a district, but would be a nonprofit organization. So next slide. What AFIG can do is we can cover the incremental cost to purchase new alternative fuel vehicles. That's the difference between a conventional and an alternative fuel model of vehicle. There's no GVWR limit on eligible vehicles, so we can do, smaller passenger vehicles all the way up to full-size school buses. Unlike some other programs that have dealt with replacing new school vehicles, there's no scrappage requirement. So if you're just adding to your fleet and not necessarily replacing vehicles, you're still eligible for AFIG. And like I said, buses of any size are eligible for the program. Next slide. The maximum award amount for an AFIG grant is $300,000 per applicant. There are maximum vehicle awards of up to 100% of the incremental cost with specific limits, up to $75,000 per vehicle for a battery capacity between 50 and 100 kilowatt hours, and up to $100,000 for a vehicle that has a battery capacity above 100 kilowatt hours. Next slide. Right now, AFIG is open. We are accepting applications through midnight on December 20th. of this year. AFIG is an annual program, so if you miss this deadline, we will be opening sometime in the spring for applications. We typically do 2 application rounds per year, one in the summer and then one at the end of December. And then just some examples of what we've done previously with AFIG for electric school buses. Rower Bus Services received a $100,000 grant for a demonstration electric school bus up here in the Susquehanna School District. And then we also have given the Philadelphia School District 2 awards totaling $600,000 for 6 vehicles. And then my contact information, I'm readily available for any question you may have about AFIG. I've been doing this for quite some time, so anything you've got to throw at me, I'll see what I can do about it. All right. Well, thank you, everyone.
All right, Charlotte and Sydney, you can go right ahead.
All right, I'll start us off. Sydney and I are from Region 3 EPA, and we're going to talk about the clean school bus funding that is available currently. So why choose clean school buses? Obviously for the reduced greenhouse gas emissions, cleaner air resulting from cleaner buses on the road, bus loading areas and communities in which they are operated will receive these benefits. It has cost-saving advantages, including replacing the older diesel school buses with clean school buses, often reducing maintenance costs and fuel costs in the long run, and improved student health from the lack of diesel emissions. Okay, go ahead. Region 3 selectees, in total for 2022 clean school bus rebate, they awarded roughly $965 million in rebates. In 2023, we gave out just under $1 billion in grant funding. And in 2023, across all of EPA, awarded nearly $900 million in rebates. Specifically for Pennsylvania, there was 11 selectees in the 2022 rebate program, with 105 electric and 1 propane bus provided. In 2023 grants, 2 selectees serving 5 school districts total. And for 2023 clean school bus rebates, 25 selectees in Pennsylvania and 208 electric and 21 propane buses were supplied. Next. So an overview of the Clean School Bus Program. This is under the bipartisan infrastructure law, providing $5 billion over 5 years between fiscal year 2022 and 2026 for the replacement of existing school buses to zero emission and clean school buses. The clean school bus funding opportunity is currently available. There is currently a rebate open for the 2024 application season. It's closing in January, so get your applications started and get them in ASAP. So the EPA is offering $965 million for clean school buses and zero emission school buses. They've modified this amount based on the application pool and other pertinent factors. Funding is subject to availability and towards awards may be, and total awards may be higher or lower than the anticipated fund. Eligible activities include the replacement of existing internal combustion engines, school buses with electric, propane, or natural compressed gas, as well as the purchase and installation of the electric vehicle supply equipment. The EPA is prioritizing applications that will replace buses serving high-need local education agencies, tribal school districts, funding by the Bureau of Indian Education, and those receiving basic support payments for students living in the tribal lands. The changes for the 2023 rebate program, they've increased the bus maximum to 50 buses and decreased funding per bus. Next. So talking about rebates versus grants, the current Funding that is available is a rebate, so we're going to focus on the rebates rather than the grants, which is good because rebates are a much simpler and quick process. Selectees are determined by a random number generator, and it's a lottery process rather than an evaluation of application materials. Selectees will receive funding upon EPA review and approval, and selectees will work with their vendors to distribute the funds as quickly as possible. Next. So who is eligible to apply? State and local government entities responsible for providing school bus services, public charter school districts responsible for the purchase, lease, license, and contract of school bus services, Indian tribes, tribal organizations, nonprofits, school transportation associations, and eligible contractors, OEMs, dealers, private school bus fleets. And I'm going to turn it over to Sydney.
Thanks, Charlotte. So next slide, please. So we want to talk about the bus and infrastructure funding available per bus this time. So based on your prioritization status, buses serving school districts that meet one or more prioritization criteria can receive up to $325,000 for bus and charging infrastructure for a zero-emission Class 7 bus. Buses serving school districts that are not prioritized can receive up to $170,000 for bus and charging infrastructure for that same zero-emission Class 7 bus. The rest of the table shows the zero-emission class size funding, as well as compressed natural gas and propane options. Again, to highlight a note at the bottom, this funding level is for both bus and new charging infrastructure, and recipients can decide how they want to split that funding between the two. Next slide. So we want to highlight some of the infrastructure funding restrictions. With EPA funding for infrastructure, there are a couple eligible expenses. All of those have to be behind the meter, like the electrical panel, the charging stations, battery energy storage systems. Unfortunately, anything in front of the meter, like transformers and part of the utility distribution network, would not be eligible to be funded through EPA funding. And then also on this slide, we want to talk about the Build America, Buy America requirements. School buses are not subject to the BABR requirements, but the charging infrastructure is subject to Build America, Buy America. And if you have any questions about that, you can definitely reach out to us. Next slide, please. So how to apply? Currently, the rebate, like Charlotte said, is open. Look at the Clean School Bus website for all the different tools and resources, links to a lot of great resources to help you out with your application and webinars. Please make sure your organization is registered with sam.gov. If it's not already, that is the part we've heard from applicants that takes the longest. And then be sure to complete your application by January 9th at 4 p.m. Next slide. So we wanted to highlight some of the feedback we've gotten from past applicants and selectees, some recommendations I have for districts who are applying or have been selected. So make sure you're talking to your contractors, your school boards, and your transportation managers as soon as you know you want to participate in the program. One, because there's a form that the school board needs to sign off of, and also that these new buses have to serve your school for the next 5 years. For infrastructure and utility, make sure you know what your current power supply is, talk to your utility companies, use EPA's Utility Engagement Pledge, which is on our website and helps connect the school districts to local utilities in your area. They can help you with what electrical upgrades are going to be needed and what infrastructure you should consider. Again, think about your fleet composition, talk to your transportation managers, thinking about route length, passenger amount, or how many routes you run in a day, your temperature and what the landscape is like. And then again, utilize these national, state, and local resources, which we'll touch on the next slide, please. Thanks. So one of those resources is the Joint Office of Energy and Transportation. This is a coordination with EPA. The Joint Office can provide applicants and selectees with the following support, such as coordinating with these electrical utilities, looking at different funding options. They'll help you plan out your chargers and what charging infrastructure is going to be needed. They can do a route analysis if you haven't done so already, as well as provide workforce and training development. Their helpline is Clean School Bus TA at nrel.gov, or we can provide that to you as well. Next slide. Some important dates to remember. Currently, as Charlotte said, the rebate is open. There are various webinars happening from EPA headquarters as well as local organizations that we partner with. The final date to submit questions to the Q&A is this week on the 14th, and then deadline for application is January 9th at 4 p.m. The anticipated notification of selection is going to be in spring of 2025, and then payment request forms and invoices are due in summer and fall of next year. Next slide. Again, really quick summary, EPA encourages school districts to consider what structure of competition best suits their need. Again, this is a rebate for the 2024 rebate program, not a grant. So consider if that's the best option for your school. A lot of school districts do like that better just because it's faster. And then again, that hard deadline of January 9th, 2025 at 4 p.m. Look at the different resources on EPA's Clean School Bus website, and the helpline for Clean School Bus and the joint office are linked here, so we can provide that to you or when the slides are sent out. And then I think there's one more slide after this, just with our contact information for Region 3, Charlotte, myself, and Emily, who also works on our team, if you have any questions. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much, Charlotte and Sydney. Next up, we are going to hear from our folks from actual school districts who took this funding and made electric school buses a reality. So we're going to hear from James Whitesel from Unionville Chad's Ford School District and Mark J.J. Carnes from Steelton-Highspire School District. So, all right, take it away, James.
Thank you, Melissa, and good evening, everybody. As Melissa said, I'm James Whitesel, and I'm going to talk to you a little bit about our district's journey and our experiences with electric buses. We definitely like where we are in our electric bus journey. We've landed here without a lot of fanfare or conflict, which is great in today's world. So hopefully this presentation will provide you some insight, some thoughts, and maybe some ideas that you can take back to your organization in order to get your journey started as well. Or maybe if you already started your journey, what I share with you today can help advance it along. So as you see here, back in October of 2022, our board approved a 2 electric bus pilot program with Highland fleets. And I'll get into a little bit later about why we chose Highland fleets. But here's the thing, we didn't just bring a proposal to our board out of the blue about doing electric buses. Our journey actually started about a year earlier by creating a district goal around sustainability in general. I'm pretty sure every school district has either a yearly or every 3-year goal-making process. It's critical to getting important things done. It's normally big picture type stuff. So in 2021, as you see here, our goal was establish a sustainability leadership task force that will include key stakeholders from district staff, community members, students, and energy experts. And the charge of the committee is to develop a long-term plan for sustainability and clean energy that would be presented to the board. So that started with an open letter to our entire community. It was a 1-page email. It went through our communications department, included the goal, the time commitment, indicated it was completely a volunteer. We're hoping to get responses from maybe 30 or 40 people to be a part of it. And we're surprised. We almost got 90 responses from people who wanted to be involved. And over 85% of those were from parents and students. So in October of 21, our task force was off and running. We set up a monthly meeting schedule. We met for eight months. We created working groups within the task force that members could decide what they wanted to be a part of. And the end result was a sustainability roadmap for the district of both short and long-term goals. And I included a link in the presentation here to the entire report. But that was presented to our board in June of 22. And we used members of the task force, including students, to present to the board. So the next slide shows a couple of pages of the report. It doesn't really do it justice, but what I really want to share with you is, if we click through a few more slides there, the next page of the report. Yeah, go ahead, right there. There we go. This was under energy conservation and efficiency. It's our item 1-3A that says review converting bus and vehicle fleet to electric vehicles. And that was really it. That was the catalyst for starting the process of exploring electric buses. And I don't know about other school districts, but in our district, when there's a committee or a task force formed by community members and parents, and they produce a document with a recommendation like that, it carries a lot of weight. So next slide, that that was a little bit about the background of how it started for us, and I believe it's an important first step to help set yourself up in the process, and help set you up for success. So back to our electric bus pilot program. In the summer of 2022, we started to investigate electric buses. We knew we wanted to start with a partner, because trying to do this on our own was going to be tough. The technology was new to us, very new to the school bus manufacturers as well. And we were looking for a solution that wasn't going to tie up a lot of our internal staff's time to ensure it all worked. And that's where Highland's bus as a service solution was very interesting to us. Here's our timeline from the point when we first approved it. It really took about a year to see our first bus. Our second bus came in a little bit later. We had a little bit of an issue, some challenges. It wouldn't take a charge. But that bus was returned to us in April, and it's been running ever since. And this month, I'm actually presenting to our board some options on possibly doing 5 more electric buses. So next slide. What our pilot program really helped us with was, better understanding of the complexity of the various components, and having a single point of contact for the issues. Just really helped us out a lot and made it easier on our team. Another thing we had was budget certainty going forward. We knew we were paying a flat annual fee for these 2 electric buses. No need to worry about diesel cost increase or battery warranty issues. All of that was covered in the annual price. And it also gave us budget savings in the short term. We had hands-on experience with the equipment, from operating the electric bus to maintaining the electric bus to operating the chargers. There are a lot of intricacies involved, and just getting experience and exposure for our mechanics and for our drivers has been really important. And we're gaining critical insight and knowledge into the actual cost to operate and maintain the electric buses. One area is electricity costs. And while all electricity costs are included in our flat fee, the electric bill still comes to us. So we see how much we're spending on the electric. And what we've seen is the cost benefit of electricity versus diesel fuel, as we're seeing about 50% less in electricity costs than what it would have cost us to fuel it with diesel. So the next page here is just a few quotes from our bus drivers. And to be honest, the electric bus isn't everyone's cup of tea. So sorry, I was in a rubber a little bit. There are some that like it, and there are some that don't. We're not forcing drivers to use them. We rotate the buses on different routes to get drivers exposure, but to also get route experience. So I'll wrap things up here on my end by saying our introduction to electric buses has been good. However, it had its share of hiccups, which we've worked through. And I believe having a guiding document to support the initial decision and having a partner in that implementation process has helped make it much smoother, for us. That's it for me. Thank you.
Thanks, James. All right, so JJ, you're up.
Hello, everybody. I know the screen says Mark Carnes. I go by the nickname of JJ. Born and raised in Steelton, PA. I actually graduated from the Steelton-Highspire School District, class of '97. So I operate from a little bit of a different standpoint because it's home for me. So just a quick background on us. I only have a few slides here. We are Steelton. One of the boroughs that we're comprised of is America's first steel company. That was the steel plant that was built to rebuild our country after the Civil War. So, it's obviously heavily relied on fossil fuels down there. Small school district, 2 buildings, K to 6, 7 through 12. You can see here, you know, we're a very small, underfunded urban school district. We border the capital city of the state, so we get a lot of bleed over from them. 15 years in a deficit is where we've been at, urban schools. This leads to underfunding here in our state. So prior to going with the school buses, we made the jump. We went solar on our own through the use of a power purchase agreement with our HVAC company McClure. So we have a 1.7 megawatt array that sits out back that provides 100% of our electrical usage. So when the EPA's Clean School Bus Program became available, I saw electric school buses. Hey, I can charge those off of my solar array. That means I don't have to buy diesel fuel. And that was honestly the length of the thought process and whether or not we should apply for these for the electric school buses. So with us being in a deficit for all that time, obviously, you know, this is going to save us money. So we said go. If it saves money, it allows us to put more money back into the education of our students, which, as you can see, our last bullet there, our entire admin office lives by that simple phrase, what is best for students? What is best for our students? And as long as we ask that question and that question can be answered, if the answer is yes, we move forward with whatever we're doing because we're all here for the students. So if you could jump to the next slide, please. So we contract with First Student, and my man Kevin is coming up here. He's a couple people after me. Kevin Matthews from First Student. So the first round of the EPA program was a rebate program. So it was taking the buses off of the road, replacing them with the electric buses. We contract with First Student. First round, contractors were not permitted to apply. So we applied. We were awarded it, so it passes through to First Student. So they removed 6 diesel buses from our fleet, replaced them with the 6 electric school buses, which was super helpful for us. Like I said, we kind of did things backwards, right? In some sense of the mean, where we applied first, because I never thought in a million years we would get it, right? I was like, oh, tiny little school district, all the school districts in the country, no way we're going to get it. Well, then we got it. So then we've got to work. So we contacted First Student, obviously right away, because to notify them, they have other electrified fleets across the country. So we started with them and their engineering team. They came out, did a lot of groundwork with us, load studies to ensure that we had the electrical capacity to charge these buses, which for us we did, because when we went solar, we also took the entire district LED, which freed up about almost half of our load usage at that time. So we were able to add 6 30 kW chargers. Once again, you know, there's money included in the EPA program for that. When it was all said and done, in the end, we had to throw in us and First Student together. We threw in a total of about $60,000 in additional funds is what it cost to get the chargers installed. The chargers were a little bit more than what the EPA allotted for, but you know, we were able to get them in, and then the little charging setup down here. I'll let Kevin talk about that a little later. That's a First Student thing there with. The flex charge is the name of that thing, where it's a flexible mobile charging infrastructure. So that's a pretty slick process. So then what we're looking at now, you know, with the advent of the Vita X technology, which is taking voltage from electric buses and electric vehicles and pushing it either back into the building or back into the grid. To either power the building or generate or you can generate additional revenue by selling it, by pushing energy back into the grid. That gets pretty deep in the weeds, but for us, it's been amazing because our students, with us being at 95% of our kids at or below the poverty line, it's awesome for our kids because our students are typically at the back of the line, at the have-nots. So to be able to provide our kids with brand new state-of-the-art school buses, and beyond that being new, they are wildly quiet. So our students show up to school in better moods in the morning. because they're not yelling and screaming all of the time. There's less incidences on the bus because the bus drivers can hear everything that's happening in the bus. I mean, it's good, 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 good. My recommendation is to everybody is just apply, put the application out there first. Because if you spend time trying to do load studies and transportation studies, you're taking time off the calendar and you may not even get in. And now obviously we're reaching the end of the program. So my recommendation is for everybody, it has been from the beginning, apply first. If you get awarded, then it's time to hit the ground running. And your best bet, just like James said before me, is try to find a partner that can help kind of walk you through it, that's dealing with it. Like First Student, I know like obviously they provide transportation, but they also will provide their engineering services. If you reach out to them, you do not have to contract with them to take their bus services in order just to get their engineering services. So once again, my recommendation is go for it. Don't waste time. See what you can do. There we go. Last slide. That's just as simple as it could get. It's free to apply. It's very easy to apply as well. If you do have a partner or a contractor like First Student, get with them. They'll get you the information. You input the stuff, and you're good to you're good to go. See what happens. And then if this is your first event, you're moving forward to it. But then you're also you can open up more opportunities for green, like solar, things like that. So my contact information is in here. If anybody has detailed questions for me specifically, reach out to me. We love to share our story, what we do, how we do it, because we love to be we love to be a point of pride out there for everybody else. Because once again, if the tiny little school district here in the state of Pennsylvania, if we can get it done, anybody can get it done. So appreciate everybody on here. Thanks for your time. Reach out to me if you have any questions.
Oh, Melissa, you're on mute.
Thank you. All right, then I'm just going to move forward. Okay, so next up we have fleet management. We're going to hear from Claire Alford from Highland Electric Fleets and Kevin Matthews from First Student. So welcome, Claire.
Thanks, Melissa, and thanks everybody for being here today. A lot of good information shared so far. So to James and JJ's point, Highland and in addition First Student, who will speak after, are one of those partners that will work with the school district to help apply for EPA round 4, but also state programs, or just in general, if you want to move forward, we partner with districts. If you want to go to the next slide. Awesome. So a little bit about Highland, and I'll kind of describe what we do as a partner. So Highland was founded in 2019. We are active in over 30 states, and I'll show a map of all of our current projects across the US, and also in Canada. So we have secured over $350 million in grants and incentives, such as EPA's previous rounds of clean school bus funding. We have the largest electric school bus project in North America, with a total of 326 buses at the end of our contract, and we currently have over 600 electric school buses under contract, and we provide fleet electrification as a service, or electrification as a service. There's a few different acronyms for it, but it was a really popular business model kind of at the advent of solar, and now Highland is taking that and applying it to school bus electrification. You can go to the next slide. So here you'll see the map of our projects that span the US, including the 2-bus pilot project at Unionville Chadds Ford that James talked about. We have over 2 million miles driven that are electric, from East Coast to West Coast. So very different environments, urban, rural, and also very different climates, really cold, really hot. So we've kind of got experience in all different places across those 600 buses that we have under contract. And that includes over 5 projects that are in rural or underserved communities. Let me keep going. So why do you want to upgrade to electric? I won't dwell on some of these slides because I think some of our previous speakers have touched on it a little bit. But if I can go to my next slide, it just talks about, and we can go to the next slide. Awesome. So it just talks about some of the community benefits of electric school buses. I think some of them we hear quite a bit. I think a lot of that is around community health and the benefits to not only the children that are riding the buses and the school bus drivers, but also members of the community. Some of them that I like to point out that aren't always talked about would be emergency resiliency. And I think both James and JJ maybe touched on this a little bit, but these electric school buses are big batteries on wheels. So they can be used not only to transport kids to and from school, but also in emergency situations, power your community with the vehicle to building applications. And then another one I like to point out is grid modernization. So with vehicle to grid technologies, where you're sending that power back to the electric grid, these buses kind of help build a stronger, more reliable grid, not only for your current your immediate community, but your state and your larger grid. So we'll keep going. So with electric buses, ultimately with implementation done right, you can have more affordable and more reliable fleets. So want to talk a little bit more about the affordability piece. If I can go to my next slide. Awesome. So electric school buses, the upfront cost is oftentimes right now higher than a diesel bus. You know, there's always fluctuations in that depending on what's going on in the world, but generally they have a higher upfront cost. So when you work with a partner such as Highland, what we do is try to help school districts recognize the affordability potential with electric school buses upfront from year one. So like I said, we provide electrification as a service. So what that means is that we are not manufacturing any electric school buses, but we work with Thomas, with IC, with Bluebird, with a number of others. And we help a school district acquire the school buses that they want, acquire the charging infrastructure that they want, train their school bus drivers, their maintenance workers, their transportation directors on how to use the electric school buses. An added bonus, we have our own on-the-ground staff that can also help with the management of the buses. And then for the lifetime of our contract, we help with charge management, so making sure not only that the buses are charged when they need to be charged, but that they're kind of being a reliable user of the grid. And if anything happens with a battery or charging station, we cover that cost for the lifetime of our contract. So we try to offer all of that, like I said, in a way that help school districts realize from year one the affordability that electric school buses can provide. So the way that we do that is by stacking a bunch of different value streams, which is what you see here. So some of the more obvious ones are maintenance and fuel savings. Electric school buses have a lot less moving parts. It's a more reliable fuel, and doesn't fluctuate as much as diesel. There are also things that we can take advantage of as a private company, such as certain tax credits, depreciation of the assets, and any vehicle to grid revenue potential. There's scalability in contract term that plays into the prices that we're able to offer. So if we're able to work with a school district to come up with a scalable plan for how many buses they want to bring on over the next 5, the next 10 years, and we spread that out over a longer contract term, that helps us bring that price down. And I think the most important and the most relevant today, especially, are grants and incentives. So if a school district wants to apply to EPA Clean School Bus, any of the Pennsylvania DEP programs, for example, or any other state programs, if you're in other states, or any utility programs, we can help school districts kind of identify those opportunities, apply for them, and then also help with the implementation. So that is, again, it's kind of the most relevant piece right now. So right now we're in the process of helping school districts apply for EPA round 4. If we can go to the next slide. And this just lays that out. So these are kind of all of the programs you'll see on the right side of the screen are ones that can be stacked. So the stackability just means that you can apply for a federal program, a state program, a utility program, and as long as the total project cost doesn't exceed or the grant amount doesn't exceed the total project cost, you can a lot of times be able to stack these different value streams so that you're lowering that delta as much as possible. And then that delta that still might exist is where a company such as Highland can come in and close the rest of that cost delta with our private capital. So we can keep going. And lastly, in addition to, cleaner buses, more affordable buses, there is a value, I think, and we heard JJ and James talk about this too, having this performance-based partnership. So we can go to my next slide, please. So folks like Highland are experts in EV fleet implementation. So there's 3 different buckets here. There's a lot more beyond these 3, but I think these 3 are important. There are a lot of things that need to be considered when you are looking to kind of transition your fleet to electric that you wouldn't normally consider with your traditionally fueled fleet. So things like interconnection and infrastructure. So working with your utility to get the chargers not only the infrastructure built out, but interconnected, and then the engineering, permitting, and grant compliance that comes along with that. There's the chargers and energy management piece. So not only selecting the right chargers for your fleet, but then being able to manage when they're charging. Highland uses our own fleet management charge software, so we can see when the buses are charged, when they need to be charged, and make sure that they're charged every morning for routes and every afternoon for routes. And then ongoing operations and management. Like I said, there generally is a lot less maintenance on an electric school bus because of the less or the smaller amount of moving parts that it has. But there is a transition and getting your maintenance workers and everyone on the ground comfortable and feeling good about the ongoing maintenance piece. So we kind of help facilitate that as well. Go to the next slide. And then just want to finish with this kind of sums up everything that I talked about as far as what Highland's model looks like and the services that we provide. It's really from step 1 all the way down to step 6 and beyond that. Everything from designing and implementing the entire project to the maintenance that we take care of over the lifetime of our contract. So and we can go to the next slide. So like I said, we are in the process right now of helping school districts apply for EPA round 4. The incentive levels this round are lower than the previous round. So I think there's even an even greater need and a signal from the EPA for these kind of partnerships that can help close that cost delta that, like I said, may exist between what you're needing to pay and if you are awarded EPA funding. So please do reach out to me. I will put my email in the chat. And we're always happy to help, and I'm always happy to chat. Whether you want to apply with Highland or whether you want to go at it on your own, it's all good in my book. So always happy to be a helpful resource to everybody. So thank you.
Thanks, Claire. All right, and last but not least, Kevin.
Thanks, everybody, and thanks for all. I do appreciate that. So we'll run through a few things here that we can that First Student brings to the table and our look at why electrification is so important at this point in time. Next slide. So the industry is changing really significantly. This is electric school buses are here to stay regardless of political issues and so forth and so on. The industry is really making a decision to move this way. States are mandating this approach, but the other big thing that's going on is diesel prices are increasing. We're going to begin to see fewer diesel units on the road. We'll get to that in just a minute. But other reasons to continue to move at this time is the funding's available to offset the cost around charging infrastructure, and these utility programs may disappear in the next several years, and so you need to move now while you have that opportunity. And then finally, the federal funds are going to disappear at some point in time as well. And so, you could be left with facing those things, bringing in EVs without having those resources there. Next slide. One of the things to point out here why this is going on and important to Pennsylvania is the state of California has adopted emissions requirements for trucks and buses. These states that are shaded in blue and dark blue follow what California does. Pennsylvania is one of those. And so that means in the coming, after 2025 in Pennsylvania, you'll begin to see fewer models of diesel fossil fuels available. And so that's why, again, electrification is a step that continues to move forward, and we continue to see a reason to go this way. Next slide. One of the questions we frequently get on this is cold weather. EVs don't work in cold weather. The range drops down, so forth and so on. You've probably all seen the headlines of this. But if we go to the next slide, they do work. We operate 305 units in the province of Quebec, where it's roughly, we've seen temperatures of minus 22 degrees Fahrenheit. We've never missed a day because of cold weather operations. Matter of fact, the only change we've had to make is we had to buy a hairdryer because some moisture got in between the charging port and the charging cable, and we had to get the hairdryer there to thaw it out one morning to pull out. So, that's really important to know. They can be done. There are ways to preheat the bus while it's still at the charging station as well. Make it very comfortable for the driver when they first get on. And as I've said, we've now got 4 million miles of operations of EVs and never missed a day due to cold weather. Next slide. The other thing that I wanted to discuss at this point in time is also infrastructure. The yellow bus is pretty, that's what everybody sees, but it's actually all about the infrastructure. So first student, we've had our own way of installing charging infrastructure for the approximately 400 buses we operate across the North America at this point in time. We're now offering that charging infrastructure to other entities. So any school bus operator, whether you're a customer or first student or not, we will work with you to put in this above ground charging system that we call First Charge. And as you can see in the picture there, there's a container that has all the power electronics in it. That container is actually built in an ISO 19001 certified factory, and everything is pre-commissioned in that factory. So there's kind of no questions about what's going to happen when the project gets delivered. So that container is then shipped to the location. Where then we install the jersey barriers or hay rails, people call them different things. Those are the red blocks you see there, where we then install the charging stations directly on top of that. What does that mean? That means no excavation, no trenching, no digging. That's an expensive way to do things. This system runs about 30% less to install than other typical standard charging infrastructures. Next picture. And as you can see, that's what a deployed system looks like, where you have the charging stations attached there and the buses pull into there. All the conduit for both the electricity and the telecom runs behind those jersey barriers and prevents or prohibits the need to do the excavation that needs to be done. The other thing that's good about this is it's then movable and expandable. So if we start adding on more buses to the end of that row, you just drop in more jersey barriers, pull the conduit through. It doesn't disrupt operations, and you can continue, just keep going down the road. And you can reconfigure it also in different shapes. It can be a straight line, it can be in a T, it can be in a circle, whatever we need to do. And then the other good thing is if we need to, the school district wants to use that space for something else down the road, perhaps other things have come up. This entire system can be picked up, loaded on a truck, and moved to the next location where the school district wants to do its operations. So we really find that this is a really great system. And the thing we like to point out about is this is a system designed by operators for operators. This is not done by an engineering firm. This is not done by a finance company. This is really an operator to operator type system, because just like you, if you're attending from a school district, our requirement is to safely and reliably to deliver children each day. And that's the way we designed the system to do. Next slide. So this slide has been dated since we had to submit it for this program. We're now at 390 EVs deployed across North America. Each one of those dots represents projects that we have completed or are underway. We have over 1,900 school buses, electric school buses on order at this point in time. and we continue to move forward in that area. And as you can see, we're focusing on all geographies. We're in the cold weather of the north. You can see we have operations in Montana where it's not only cold, those are long routes, and we can make those work as well. So we've got a lot of great experience that we can bring to the table to make you have a successful deployment. Next slide. We are the worldwide leader in EVs. We have the most on the road, the most miles driven. We also have a dedicated funding team. So if you need assistance with doing applications for EPA or Pennsylvania or with your utility, we can work with you to do that. We secured more than $500 million in funding to date for our own operations. And then again, first charge. We really believe that that product and approach will really make a great difference for school bus operators and even medium and other heavy duty fleet operators. And as you can see, the awards we've won are listed across the bottom, recognizing the work we've done to date. Next slide. So just a few things to keep in mind when you're doing this. You know, everybody can get excited about this, but again, safe and reliability are the key things. And that's what everything has to be done with an objective toward. You have to make sure that the system you put in is going to meet that, because if it doesn't, that's when you know the problems occur. And that's why working with entities that have experience is really critical to that. Again, at this point in time, funding is really critical. So going after those state programs, those federal programs that exist today are critical, but also understanding and working with your utility. Really, before you even call EPA about a grant, you should call your local utility and have a conversation with them about what it means to bring electrification into your area. Many of the times, you don't have to have upgrades. We find if once we up to 25 buses we deploy at a location, we really don't need upgrades on the power side. But once we get above 25, yeah, we start to see that going on. So you need to understand all those things. And then, as I think Claire pointed out, won't spend a lot of time this, think about beyond transportation. School buses have electric school buses have other capabilities that should be examined and taken advantage of as well. Next slide. Again, we've talked about these, other people touched on, so I won't handle here, but the noise reduction, I will say, JJ mentioned it, and his is one of the benefits we did not expect to come out of this project. And it has literally turned out to be a really significant project, a benefit. So I think that's all I have at this time. Happy to answer any questions, and thanks for everybody coming out today.
All right, thank you so much, Kevin. Okay, so quick acknowledgement of our co-sponsors today. Thank you to Generation 180. You can read a little bit about them on this slide there, check them out. And then we also do have folks, Shannon is here from Generation 180 if you have questions for them specifically. And then as I mentioned before, yep, both myself and Nate are from Sierra Club, Pennsylvania. So specifically our Clean Communities project addresses bringing IRA, BIL funding into our communities. So please check that out, and you can sign up at the link on the slide there, as well as our Clean Energy for All webinar series. And then our next slide, community advocates for clean energy. So if you're in the greater Philadelphia region and you want to work on electrifying your schools, please check them out. Bill, our host, is from CASE. So if you have questions specifically for them, Bill is your person. With that, we will get to our Q&A. Thank you to the panelists who did already answer some of our questions that were received during the presentation. Lingering questions. The first one is, what is the approximate net cost to a district to purchase an ESB after the awarded funding? Would anyone like to take that?
That's a big depends. Because it's how much grant you receive, but also all the buses have different prices. So the battery size of the bus, the kilowatt hours, on the type C's and D's, you're as small as 155 kilowatt hour battery pack, but you can go up to as high as 315 kilowatt hour battery pack. And that really drives the price as well. And then the type A's, they run significantly more expensive in a ratio in terms of what their fossil fuel counterparts. So it's hard to say there's a typical in there. And then, of course, your buying power impacts pricing as well.
Great, thanks, Kevin. And I'm also acknowledging there is a request for Kevin's contact information, both in the chat and Q&A. So if Kevin is comfortable sharing that, or we can send it afterwards, we could also do it that way as well. All right, so I see a hand is raised from Shweta. Go ahead. We can take you off of mute.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. My question is for Sierra Club. I'm from Garnet Valley, Pennsylvania, and I'm a parent. My two kids go to the high school here. My question is there some kind of, I know Generation 180 might have some resources, but do you have any guidance for any students or parents who wish to present this idea to school, or how do we go about that? Is there like a cohort of some sort that you're starting from Sierra Club that can help support some of these students who might take initiative to take it up to the school?
Yes, so we've got a couple of options. If you are in the greater Philadelphia region, you'll want to connect with the community advocates for clean energy folks. They're working in those counties. Are you in Delaware County? Did I hear that correct?
Yes.
Yep. So then Bill, who is on with us, I don't know if he wants to come off of mute and speak to this now, or if Kirk does as well. Kirk, go right ahead.
Yes. What we've done, I'm in Chester County, and I'm one of the community advocates. Whenever there is an open public an opportunity to speak publicly at a board meeting, school board meeting, take it. Because they really need to hear the feedback from parents and students. I think because they feel that makes them listening to their stakeholders instead of just being told what to do. So I would highly suggest you do that to the maximum of your ability. If there are student groups that want to form around this, please encourage that.
Oh, thank you. I have to gauge interest. I'm going to start with my kids first. So I have to gauge interest to see how many students I can find who'd like to advocate for this. But thank you.
I'll also chime in there. I'm gonna drop our toolkit, our advocacy toolkit in the chat. It's kind of a package of materials. I think it has an email template in there for PTAs and school boards. It has some like FAQ questions answered about electric school buses. And I think some social media templates that you can use, but that might also be a helpful resource.
Great, thank you, Claire. We've got a hand raised from Pamela. Pamela, you should be able to unmute.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. So I am new to my position here, and I'm a program manager for our Dear VW program. And the person in that position is also new, so she's getting acquainted to the Dear VW program. And this sounds like something, the rebate program sounds like something that might be useful. So I was just wondering, I know it was mentioned that the rebates are much easier than the grants. Do you get more response from your school districts and or businesses that are local with the rebate program versus the Dear VW? Is it definitely easier to use? Because we have some projects that have been in the works with the DEER program, but the response doesn't seem to be the greatest. So I'm just looking at ways to maybe make this easier, make this better for the people who want to go this route with the electric buses. So I guess maybe putting us in contact with people in states that have a successful program that maybe we could use their information. Maybe you can supply your contact information in the chat.
I'm gonna jump in here and I might toss it to Sydney or Charlotte. But I think and I think Pamela, maybe this like is kind of an answer to a question in parallel to what you're speaking of, but maybe talking about, I know there are some guidelines around stacking VW and DERA funding with EPA Clean School Bus funding. I don't know, Sydney, if you want to talk a little bit about that.
I'll put in the chat as well the DERA helpline. You can also reach out to us as well. We can connect you with the DERA program. The Clean School Bus program was built off of an old DERA program that's not functioning anymore. So there are some similarities, but the DERA program and the school bus program tend to have different audiences, even though there is some connection between the two. But we can definitely talk to you about that if you have questions about that in the region, or if there's any Region 3 states that we can try to connect you with. So I'll put our emails in the chat as well.
Okay, that sounds good, because we are in the state of Delaware, so we may not have access to the same funds that you were talking about for Pennsylvania. So thank you.
Great, thanks, Pamela, Claire, Sydney. I'm hopping back over to our Q&A. From Douglas, what is the procedure to apply for e-buses when a school district leases the buses from First Student? How is the number of buses determined for them?
Yeah, so I was sorry, I was typing a response back on that one. So what we do is we sit down and look at the criteria of the grant. That drives a lot of if we can apply for a specific school district that's a customer, and then how we proceed from there. The number of buses is generally determined as we go for the maximum. So in EPA round 4 that we're looking at now, that we can apply for up to 50 buses. So if there are 50 buses or more in your fleet, we'll apply for 50. If there are only 20 in your fleet, we'll apply for 20. And then once we receive the award, then we'll figure it out. We'll run the electrical, we'll run the cost, and see what we can do. And sometimes, if we applied for 20, we may settle on only doing 16 because that's what makes most cost-effective sense with the school district and the operations we have there. Does that help?
Thanks, Kevin. Also going back to the Q&A, would Highland be a good start to determine the feasibility of electric school buses for our district?
Yeah, it's definitely something that we work on a lot with school districts, whether they end up going with Highland or not. Something that we can offer is that we are happy to come out to your depot, walk your depot, determine the feasibility not only of going electric, but kind of like I said, the scalability of electric buses within your fleet, and the needed charging infrastructure. So I think definitely a good place to start. And if you do want to reach out to me, I'm happy to get you in touch with the right folks and also connect you with I think some helpful resources outside of Highland as well that can also help you look into it.
Okay, thanks, Claire. Also acknowledging there is a request for Kirk's email in the chat. So if Kirk is willing to share that. Are there any other questions from our attendees today? We are at 1:06. We did allot some extra time for questions to run over. So if you, I'm raising my own hand. If you do have a question, feel free to raise your hand, put it in the chat or in the Q&A. Otherwise, we will move to, there were a couple of lingering questions from folks who had registered with questions. So I'm going to put those out there. Okay, so then one of our questions from a Zoom registrant was the max for the current rebate is 50 buses. Is there a minimum requirement?
I can answer that. For 2024 for the rebates, minimum is just one bus. So if you only want to try out one, we have a couple applicants in the past rounds who did just try out one bus to see if it was working for them. So that's definitely possible.
Great. One it is. Okay, next. Do you have any guidance or recommendations on working with a vendor who is not interested in adding electric school buses to their fleet?
If by vendor you mean contractor, you should have a real serious discussion with them. There is no reason they shouldn't be moving to EV. I think I've laid out the reasons why it's going forward. If they are hesitant or resistant, feel free to call us. You can always change vendors. We fully embrace electrification and work with all of our clients to bring EVs into their fleet.
Great, thanks, Kevin. All right, still not seeing hands. All right, are local power companies prepared to handle the high demand for charging? Thoughts on that?
Yeah, as I mentioned earlier, electric school buses really aren't that big of a demand. We found when we put 25 at one location, we haven't had to upgrade on the utility side for power. Because remember, the buses charge overnight, so over sometimes a 12-hour period. And we found we can reduce the charge rate to as low as 8 kilowatts to do the charging overnight. And so you're really not putting a big stress on the grid. And so that can be addressed. Now, there are situations where the grid in your area is strained, difficult. And we have to look at things. We just announced a project with Con Ed, the utility in New York City, in October. We're actually going to build a virtual power plant on our side of the meter, on our location, to basically provide our own power at the location, and then we'll be selling that power back to Con Ed because they've got a problem in that area. So there are some creative things you can do here.
Excellent. Okay. A question about the range on the battery charge. Can a bus complete pickup and delivery routes with one charge, as in one charge per day?
Depends on the length of the route, but yes, we do it very, very frequently.
Yeah, I'll just echo what Kevin said earlier about the kind of ideal use cases of electric school bus, unlike a personal vehicle, where your routes kind of vary day to day. For the most part, electric school buses have pretty defined routes, and with that comes really defined charging schedules. So we also have no problem with morning routes, a top-off charge during the middle of the day, and serving the afternoon routes and charging overnight. So they really are an excellent use case for electric vehicles in general.
Okay, and then working through, looks like this might be our last sort of unanswered question from our Zoom registrants. Okay, so this question is tying in Solar for Schools grant money. So I believe they're asking if there's support for tying in the smaller Solar for Schools grants, building a solar field, and then using that to charge buses. Is there intersectional support from any of your organizations? I think is my interpretation of this question.
I can respond to that. I mean, they're completely separate programs. So at this point, there is no intersectionality, but though it doesn't mean like in the future that there might be preference given and say if you're doing a full electrification and they want to support you to advance your sustainability initiatives, there's potential that can help your narrative, I would say. So I would include that, but there is no intersectionality of these programs at this time.
Thanks, Shannon. And we do have a question in the Q&A from Paul. How long does the proper charge take? Can you do a quick charge?
Well, again, there are all kinds of ways to do it. So, I mean, yeah, you can bring in a 500 kilowatt charger into the location and get the bus done in a matter of a few minutes. If that's cost effective, not necessarily so. And again, then it depends on the state of charge when the bus comes back from the run. So typically we like to have our buses come back at a 40 to 60% state of charge after the morning run. That gives us that 2 to 3 hour window in between morning and afternoon routes to top it back up and get it out for the run there. It just takes planning and to figure this out. But yeah, you can design the charging infrastructure to cost effectively. That's the important thing. Cost effectively meet your route requirements.
All right, thanks, Kevin. All right, folks, we're at 1:13, so I feel like that's our appropriate stopping point. So we're wrapping up. Thank you to all of our speakers and our panelists. Thank you to everyone who kind of hung around a little after. We managed to get through all of our Zoom questions, so that always makes me smile. We appreciated all the insights that you delivered today. Folks, you're going to get all of this in your email, the recording, the slide deck. Please feel free to, reach out to these experts, right? We want to get school buses into every school district in Pennsylvania. So don't be shy about reaching out to Sierra Club, Generation 180, to Case, to all of our speakers here. Let's make this happen, right? I think that's a wrap up, unless Bill wants to close us out. Our esteemed host.
So,
yes, thank you, Bill.
Thank you all our host, presenters, panelists, support staff, co-volunteers, Kirk, Shannon. We kind of had this idea to pull this together with Claire Self based on a webinar we ran in April. So again, thank you for your turnout and all the great questions, and presenters. Thank you so much for all the content you put together and all the experiences you've shared. Really appreciate it. Take care, everyone.
Take care, everyone.